"You dirty rat, you kill my brother." He never even really said that. But welcome, you beautiful dirty rats, to another episode of the Top 10 Favorite and from what I believe are the best performances of some of the greatest actors in all of cinema. That's right, take 'em up. I'm starting from 10 and then tap dancing down the stairs to number 1. And let me tell you something, you mugs. I've seen every film attainable of each artist here. Don't ever forget that. So every list here comes from rambunctiously sensational and tough kicking accuracy. Here is a top 10 not to be missed, folks, for today we're talking about one of the greatest actors that ever was. One of my sincere favorites growing up and still to this day, the iconic and compelling James Cagney. Born as James Francis Cagney Jr. on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, he grew up apparently very sickly, so sickly that his mother thought he would actually die at such a young age. Cagney, believing it was because of the poverty he grew up in. He did everything for money, being a junior architect, night doorman, bellhop, draughtsman, and a book custodian at the New York Public Library, where he met Florence James, a pioneer of theater, specifically in Seattle, who gave Cagney a leg up on acting. His major love, of course, was the art of dance and how he loved to dance till the sun came up, and this propelled him even into amateur boxing because of the movement, right? But his ultimate talent and skill of dance was the real ticket that could make his family more money. And so off to vaudeville, same thing, he went, performing for 10 years with different troupes, even replacing Cary Grant on one of his traveling vaudevillian troupes. It was only a matter of time, traveling the world in theater, that he would make it back to New York to do 2 significant plays, Maggie the Magnificent and Penny Arcade, both of which featured Joan Blondell. Once Warner Brothers saw Penny Arcade, they bought the rights and renamed it Sinner's Holiday, bringing Blondell and Cagney along with it. Boom, Cagney's face is on screen, and you know what else is coming? One of the greatest and most iconic artists that would take Hollywood by the horns and smack it right in the kisser. Jimmy Cagney, folks, is no doubt an icon of epic proportions, for he combined the impossible of predominantly playing the greatest tough guys on screen and also playing the sweetest and most dynamic song and dance men we've ever seen. You name any actor and filmmaker from the 1970s specifically who are still working in the business today, and they will always tell you that Jimmy Cagney was and is one of their greatest inspirations for the power of cinema and what real acting is. As I read more about him, it is truly hilarious to see that the main reason he became an actor was not for the fame, not the recognition, but just to get a job and provide for his family. And I love that. Now, his love for telling stories certainly grew over time once he was awarded script approval, but I love that he was an artist who was really driven by dynamic and simple realism, and more than anything, always gave heart and soul to every character he played. So grab your grapefruit, don't go yellow, and don't try any funny business as we get into the top 10 best performances of the greatest tough guy, song and dance man to light up our screens, the one, the only, James Cagney. Now, starting off at number 10, the pre-code musical classic, Footlight Parade. And golly gee, how I wish I could even put this one much higher because of how flippin' spectacular Cagney's performance is in this. Like I said, making his reputation as the tough guy, this was an ultimate change of pace when his career in film was just taking off as the tough guy. Now, to see him play Chester Kent here, based on Broadway and vaudeville producer Chester Hale, whom director Busby Berkeley worked with producing short musical prologues from the movies, is utterly magical and exciting. For this being his first appearance on film, showcasing his dynamic triple threat abilities, acting, singing, and most importantly, dancing. You just can't ever forget it, ever. All of Busby Berkeley's numbers in this film are just sensational, but when we see the Shanghai Lil number and Cagney busting up the sailor uniform, busting up the tap shoes on the bar, the way Cagney dances is ever so light and graceful that you can't believe he didn't make even more musicals. Cagney lobbied hard for this role too because of his background, and thank God, because whenever Cagney's on screen, oh God, it's even better. Also, there's nothing like the chemistry between he and Joan Blondell in their 6th film together out of 7, which quintessentially, I wholeheartedly believe this is their best collaboration together, as Joan plays his stenographer assistant who happens to be in love with him, of course, except he's got another dame by his side. It's rip-roaring fun that you love to watch over and over again because of Cagney. Number 9, The Fighting 69th. A real great war film featuring the great partnership of the Irish Mafia of Hollywood, as they were called, Cagney and Pat O'Brien, who did 9 pictures together, along with Frank McHugh, let's not forget, who also did 9 pictures with Cagney, based on the New York Irish 69th Infantry Regiment during World War I, featuring real-life figures like Father Francis Duffy, whose statue still stands in Times Square, portrayed by O'Brien. This is one war film that still gets me, and gets millions of others around the world. It's your classic case of wisecracking, loudmouth Brooklyn boy Jerry Plunkett, played fantastically by Cagney, being thrown in the military, literally disobeying and disrespecting everything and everybody. The troops agree that they much rather take out Plunkett than the Germans, but Father Duffy still has faith in him, and maybe, in time and effort, he will grow and become a real soldier for his band of brothers. One thing that was always a gift and strength for Cagney is that he could build chemistry with absolutely anyone on set. And to see him come alive and turn the army upside down, it's truly wonderful. To this day, this film and Cagney's performance is celebrated every March for St. Paddy's Day, as it celebrates the power and respect of the Irish. Not to mention, luck. Number 8. 1, 2, 3. I know even this zany, fast-paced, comedic, and utterly masterful performance from Cagney should be much higher, because this was comedy at a level for Cagney that a lot of audiences were surprised at and had been wanting to see for a long time. Based on a Hungarian one-act play, the famous Billy Wilder borrowed elements from his own Ninotchka screenplay and made a political comedy set during its time of the Cold War. Filming being changed to Munich since their first filming day was in Berlin when the wall went up. Even though it's clearly a Billy Wilder film with his flair and ear for dialogue, the picture is fantastically terrific because of Cagney, who made his despicable character even funnier by just speeding up his lines. Wilder said himself that it really wasn't the content that was funny, but it was Cagney's speed that was sensational. How he was able to bring his automatic charm to the Coca-Cola executive, and clearly, it just made it even better, even though Cagney had one of his least favorite filming experiences ever because he visibly hated Horst Buchholz for intentionally trying to steal every scene away from Cagney, and didn't like how Wilder directed. Plus, Cagney even had a hard time himself just trying to keep up with the lines and the speed of it all. He could tell like this was maybe about the time to consider retiring, unfortunately. However, his performance is still considered, by all accounts, his best account in intentional comedy. Number 7, The Roaring Twenties. I know you're all roaring at the sight of the placement of this classic, since this film is one of the great classic gangster pictures of all time. And trust me, how I wish I could place Cagney's performance here as Eddie Bartlett even higher, because it's just so rich with grit and heart. Eddie decides to get into the bootlegging business during the heart of the Roaring Twenties, after serving in World War I, where he meets Bogey and Jeffrey Lynn. He partners up with Bogey, but things take a turn when he meets Priscilla Lane, and knowing he'll do anything for her, even though she doesn't love him back, and even if it might mean getting himself killed. Based on columnist Mark Hellinger's short story, The World Moves On, which was deeply accurate in gangster and bootlegger encounters, this film is thunderously gripping, tackling the journey of an average man with nothing, and how the circumstances of crime has taken over to a darker edge. But there may be some heart left in him. Cagney is of course outstanding in every frickin' scene, especially the last 10 minutes when we see Cagney broken down, giving the idea to the viewer that crime doesn't pay with his scruff, and he has to help save Lloyd, whom Priscilla Lane actually loves. And the simplicity that Cagney has in his shaggy mug about how Bogey is taking him down, that moment is utterly powerful. Director Raoul Walsh shot the hell out of this, as he always did, giving us, spoiler alert, one of the greatest final shots of Cagney dying on those snowy steps. Gladys George, oh God bless her, giving us that iconic line,
"He used to be a big shot."
But no, Cagney is and always was the big shot. Number 6, Each Dawn I Die. I tell you folks, this should not be surprising, even though it most likely is, but I certainly wish I could even rate Jimmy's performance even higher, because this is honest to God one of the most underrated performances in all of his filmography. As Frank Ross, a dedicated reporter, he is all of a sudden framed for the murder of children and sentenced for 20 years in prison. He then meets Hood Stacy, played amazingly by another icon of the gangster pictures, George Raft, and they both befriend each other as prison time has beaten and hardened Ross to the point where both he and Stacy could rat or help each other with the injustice they've been dealt with. Based on the novel, it features a partnership between Raft and Cagney that is just as phenomenal as, say, Cagney and Bogey, Cagney and O'Brien, or even Cagney and Robinson. I love that one too. They both feed off each other very effectively, which makes sense since they both started in dance. Remember that fantastic blooper they have together in this film? It's perfect. It features some of Cagney's greatest dynamic moments as Cagney is really going through the horrible throes of prison life, and Cagney has us feel it all alongside him. By the time he goes off on the warden, oh God, we feel every breath of it, especially when he breaks down at the parole hearing, how he is just pleading, how he can't do any more time. It's beautifully gut-shattering. It's usually overshadowed by George Raft's amazing performance, which got him his contract at Warner Brothers, and also overshadowed by The Roaring Twenties, which came out that same year. But in humblest of opinions, it contains Cagney at a point combining the power of gangster film noirs with the heart and grit of a prison drama that Cagney fans should always cherish. Number 5, Love Me or Leave Me. Honest to God, how I even wish this was much higher, because Cagney's brilliant performance here as real-life gangster Marty Snyder is just bursting from the seams with pathos and power, earning Cagney his 3rd and final Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, which he wholeheartedly deserved. As a fictionalized biopic of triple threat sensation Ruth Etting, played marvelously by Doris Day in her best performance, this film stands out with flying, dazzling colors. But it's really all thanks to the powerhouse performances and chemistry between Day and Cagney. Cagney is truly on fire as the gangster who has such an obsession with Ruthie that he's willing to do anything for her, except actually listen to and honor whatever she wants, especially when she wants the piano player, Johnny, played by Cameron Mitchell. Originally, the role was offered to Spencer Tracy, then Richard Widmark, then Bogey. But this movie would absolutely not be the thrilling and gutsy gangster musical drama that it is without Cagney, really adding more depth. Snyder was nicknamed Marty the Gimp, apparently, and there is so much truth even in the way Cagney limps. His movement said so much in the character, and director Charles Vidor wanted him to wear an iron clamp for the limp, but Cagney rightfully said no. He'll create the limp on his own, and he sure damn did. But then when he speaks his mind, he really blows up the screen. The amazing effect with how Cagney could have Marty ever so charming and then be a cold, abusive murderer in just a switch. It's always remarkable. This is also a clear example in how Cagney fueled his scene partners. Watch every scene between Doris and Jimmy, and Doris has confirmed it as well, that she acted better because Cagney was feeding and fueling her so much to react off of, and came to work as hot as lava, playing such a cruel, vicious, yet charming character, Marty Snyder, whom Cagney said himself was one of his own top 5 best. See, we're thinking quite alike here, Jimmy. Number 4, The Public Enemy. That's right, Jimmy Cagney's ultimate film that really made him a bona fide star, playing Tom Powers in one of the greatest opening curtain call sequences, literally hungry for power, and climbs up through the ranks of the crime world during Prohibition with his childhood pal played by Edward Woods. Cagney was originally going to play Woods' role, and Woods was the lead, but director Wild Bill Wellman saw the real star quality out of Cagney and knew he would tear this picture up with his powers. Literally, everything Cagney gives Tom is some of the best acting we ever see, not just in a gangster picture, but ever. He based Tom on actual Chicago gangster Charles Dion O'Banion and some New York City hoods he knew growing up, and some of it didn't really require acting, as real violence was really being inflicted upon these poor actors, like the machine gun sequence. That's real-life ammunition they're shooting at Cagney. But Cagney was always a pro, always committed in the scene. Now, of course, the legendary grapefruit scene has been argued as being improvised, but it has been reported by Mae Clark herself that Cagney came up to her in her trailer and said, wouldn't it be funny to just do this scene again and add a grapefruit shove just for the crew? They did it. A horrible action, of course, and there it was in the final cut of the film, which was the ultimate surprise to Clark and everyone around the world. That image has been implanted in audiences for generations and generations. Honestly, the greatest sequence in the whole film, to me, featuring the brilliant Cagney, is the revenge scene in the rain, waiting outside in the cold, harsh rain, all silent. And we see 10 different emotions coming across Cagney's face in silence as he ponders, waits, and then makes his slow charge towards the camera for his vengeance. This is brilliant filming on Wellman's part, of course, but it would not be so damn powerful without Cagney's captivating performance. Powers may have fallen to the ground screaming, "I ain't so tough," but goddamn, man, he was. Number 3. Angels with Dirty Faces. Such an incredible and iconic film, but most importantly, such a brilliant and iconic portrayal from Cagney in his first Academy Award-nominated performance for Best Actor. Based on the short story by Roland Brown, it was catered to be a Cagney picture more than ever, but more so a Dead End Kids picture after the huge hit of the film adaptation of the play Dead End, which is fantastic. Cagney at this point was exhausted with the gangster pictures and the poor pay as well as treatment he had been getting from Warner Brothers that he sued the studio and bounced. He signed up with Grand National Pictures to make Great Guy and Something to Sing About, which are lovely pictures, but actually left the company bankrupt. So back to negotiations with Warner, and to make a long story short, they reached a deal, and this was the big picture to come from that, even though Cagney was clearly playing a gangster. Rocky Sullivan. There was such an element of heart to it. Pairing up with his good pal, Pat O'Brien again, in their best collab together, Cagney again tears every scene apart with his hunched up shoulders, hitched up pants, twitched up neck, basing his performance on a drug-addicted pimp who would stand on the corner saying, "Now what do you hear? What do you say?" Also on a Peter Buta Hessling, a childhood friend of Cagney's who was convicted of murder and got the electric chair. Cagney again could say so damn much with just one movement that you got who this guy was. And yet, he was so complicated. Cagney would throw you off in what his next action would be. How Cagney is with the Dead End Kids is something very attractive, very tense, and yet very precious, for we see how these hoods look up to him, and how Pat O'Brien's father Connolly is trying to help save these kids from a fate worse than death. The ending, of course, is iconic. And yes, spoilers, again, sorry, Cagney is unbelievably gripping in his final moments on his way to the chair. O'Brien trying so hard to convince Rocky to act yella on his way to the chair to sway these kids away. Director Michael Curtiz's Oscar-nominated direction is key here, but Cagney's stern face is killing every one of us, and how he just loses it as they have to carry him to the chair. How Cagney screams and screams in terror. That sound is literally haunting. I have never experienced such a performance as that until Cagney just sucker punched you right in the guts. Of course, this was the performance that would be parodied forever in Cagney impressions, even the film being satirized in Home Alone. But there is a significant reason for that. That being Cagney's performance was something amazingly special and timeless, and never to be forgotten. Number 2, White Heat. Oh yes, Cody Jarrett, my God. Honestly, the most vicious and psychotic criminal character Cagney ever played, that some, if not most, really regard it his best performance of all time. His performance is spine-tinglingly terrifying, and yet charming, that you can never forget it. after you watch him light the screen on fire. Basing this criminal gang leader on Francis Crowley, who is utterly ruthless, Cagney incorporated the character factor of the migraines and deep psychotic meltdowns to give Cody Jarrett something more to chew on. The mother complex is what really gives Cagney's character juice and keeps us on the edge of our seat in shock, practically. Kate Barker, or Ma Barker and her boys, was another piece of inspiration for that. Cagney said the script originally was, quote, very formula, the old knock down, drag 'em out again, without a touch of imagination or originality. So Cagney was cleared to add whatever he wanted by director Raoul Walsh, which is clearly one of his best directorial efforts. How he lives and dies by his mother is very endearing, isn't it? But when he learns that something has happened to his mother, I won't give that away. While Cagney is in prison on that lunch line, how he completely transforms into an animal is something viscerally engaging, shocking, and so invigorating. That was all improvised by Cagney reportedly. How he used his big extras on opposite sides of him to hoist himself up and run down the lunch table is wild. We have never experienced a gangster like this, and in the best fashion possible, we get one of the greatest last lines in the film ever, at that chemical plant, catching fire. Cody wounded, he shouts to the heavens, boom! Unfrickin' believable. Co-star Virginia Mayo had said Cagney should have won an Oscar for his amazing performance here. I certainly do not disagree with that one. Cagney retrospectively still looked down on the picture as another cheap jack job, which is understandable considering he'd been trying to get away from the gangster genre. But Cagney's larger-than-life sadistic villainy is beautifully three-dimensional and is still well respected and loved all around the world, for it shaped the gangster genre even more from then on. Now what do you hear? We got some honorable mentions for you. A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oh, the 1935 big-time adaptation of Shakespeare's best romantic comedy, in my opinion. I mean, why do you think it's produced in every single school known to man? Featuring an all-star cast including Dick Powell, poorly miscast as Lysander, Olivia de Havilland as Hermia, an annoying Mickey Rooney as Puck, and Jimmy Cagney as the best of them all, Bottom the Weaver. For not having done Shakespeare before, Cagney is wonderful as Bottom, especially in Act 1, Scene 2, where the mechanicals are meeting to put on the show for King Oberon, Pyramus and Thisbe. Cagney adds the perfect amount of fun as the gregarious overactor. And again, it was such a beautiful change of pace for the tough guy, which he always wanted. Even the final Pyramus and Thisbe performance between he and Joe E. Brown as Flute is so much fun. Though not perfect at all, Max Reinhardt's film adaptation still remains, in my opinion, the best of the play, with its Oscar-winning cinematography and editing, nominated for Best Assistant Director and Best Picture. Felix Mendelssohn's gorgeous composition, and of course, Cagney's lively and ecstatically animated portrayal of one of Shakespeare's greatest characters, Mr. Roberts. Here we go again. After being featured under John Ford's and Jack Lemmon's videos, Jimmy Cagney's performance as Captain Morton is utterly bombastic and almost cartoonish that it still works in the comedy of the production. Based on the novel and the play, of course, it was shifted up and down during filming, which frustrated Henry Fonda, who originated the title role and plays him here, and caused a horrible assault from John Ford on set. The backstage stories on this film are quite plentiful, especially between Ford and Cagney. Apparently, when Cagney was slightly late on set one day, Ford was livid and ready to let him have it. But Cagney quickly came back with, "When I started this picture, you said that we would tangle asses before this was over. I'm ready now. Are you?" Ford backed off and they never had another problem. But it was apparently even surprising to see Cagney lose it on set, for he always was such a gentleman. But Cagney's performance is still so much fun to watch when we observe the transformation of the play into a different tone of a film. Jack Lemmon and Cagney apparently got along wonderfully. That Cagney couldn't keep a straight face in their scenes together. It's always great to have some fun on a tense set like that. City for Conquest, a swell and lovely picture based on the book, featuring Cagney not really stretching himself too far, playing a promising boxer, meaning it came in pretty simply, as Cagney, of course, was an amateur boxer growing up, practically a runner-up in the New York State lightweight division. Once again, pair with Anne Sheridan as they navigate life in the 30s, Cagney willing to give up boxing for his brother played by the great Arthur Kennedy, and Sheridan wanting to be a star dancer. Anthony Quinn gives her the shot, but also he wants a little more than a financial cut, if you know what I mean. This definitely features some of the best boxing moments from Cagney and showcases again how well he can move with his footwork, but also how amazingly he could bring the heartwarming smile to your face because of his passion that he puts into his characters. The Strawberry Blonde, another fabulous romantic comedy reteaming Cagney with director Raoul Walsh, remaking One Sunday Afternoon, which was based on the play of the same name, but this is the best adaptation for Cagney's classic wisecracking antics and temper are still so charming and alive in this 19th century set comedy. Cagney has love for the Strawberry Blonde in question, played lovingly by Rita Hayworth, even though he has more of a shot with her best friend, Amy, played wonderfully by Olivia de Havilland. It's another great change of pace for Cagney, which he absolutely loved, and it remained one of his favorite films he ever did. Man of a Thousand Faces. Oh, how I wish this was even in the top 10 as well, for it's another great biopic that Cagney brings alive to the screen, this time as literally the man of a thousand faces, Lon Chaney. Cagney just brings so much heart and soul to the character of Lon Chaney Sr. that you really push aside and forget about its historical inaccuracies, even with its script being nominated for Best Screenplay. Cagney really is the greatest piece of this whole film, for he devotes himself in the creation of the legend, recreating their iconic images of Lon Chaney's filmography, even though the makeup in this film is very flimsy. But I hold Cagney's performance and this film in a very, very special place in my heart because of Cagney learning American Sign Language, since Lon Chaney was a coda and he communicated with his parents in ASL. So those scenes mean very much to me indeed, and Cagney gives it every bit of sensitivity and tenderness that I love and appreciate always. Number 1, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Yankee Doodle Dandy, the greatest performance that showcases Cagney in his tip-top best in his only Academy Award-winning performance for Best Actor, and being the very first actor to win an Oscar for Best Actor for a musical performance. Rightfully deserved, as he breathed and danced new, refreshing, and positively sensational life to the man, the musical patriot and showman, George M. Cohan, the Yankee Doodle Dandy, even though not entirely accurate to the actual man. Cohan's daughter apparently said after watching Cagney's performance that that's the kind of life Daddy would have liked to live. Released only 6 months after Pearl Harbor, it was everything the country needed and became a gigantic hit and was once and for all the greatest opportunity and production for Cagney's masterful triple threat strength and beautiful flair for comedy as well as tender drama. Every time I watch Cagney here, I am in just awe of his passion, his love, his abilities. Every number is just incredible, thanks to great Oscar-nominated directing by Michael Curtiz again, but how he basically defies gravity with the title number. To my favorite number, Give My Regards to Broadway, is another addition to everything I love about cinema and acting. Cagney even catered his dancing style more towards Cohan's own dancing style to give it more accuracy. And always the pro carried on dancing when he sprained his ankle twice, ad-libbing that phenomenal tap dancing sequence down the stairs, which is one of the best damn things like ever, period. And doing the memorable goodbye scene with his father played amazingly by Walter Houston, reciting their great curtain call, "My mother thanks you, my father thanks you, my sister thanks you, and I thank you." Twice, because even though Cagney nailed it on the first take, Curtiz ruined it because he was crying too loudly because of how damn heartbreaking Cagney is in that scene. It is a performance that has been hailed by Premiere Magazine on their list of 100 greatest performances in film as number 6, and is beloved for generations, watched on the 4th of July every year by many, and is clear to understand why this was James Cagney's own personal favorite performance he's ever given. It's common knowledge, folks, that every time James Cagney's name is mentioned, you always think of, "You dirty rat," which actually comes close to him ever saying that in a film is in Taxi with Loretta Young, where he says, "Come out and take it, you dirty yellow-bellied rat," but never, "You dirty rat," specifically. It's like another game of telephone, I tell you. But he defined what a real hoodlum embodied, growing up around it, and gave it more life because he was the sweet and ever so gentlemanly James Cagney, bringing substance to characters of the crime world. Not sympathy, mind you, but human qualities, just like James Gandolfini in The Sopranos, Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, Robert De Niro in Mean Streets, and so on, where we get attached to these characters and fall in love with them. Always a fantastic family man, too, especially with his own sister, Jean Cagney, doing 4 movies with him, even playing his sister in Yankee Doodle Dandy. More than anything, though, James Cagney always wanted to be known as a song and dance man, which even more audiences love and appreciate of him. But if you ask me, folks, he is best remembered as one of the most inspirational artists who ever lived, who fought back against the studios for being typecast, raised money for the war after Yankee Doodle Dandy, was the president of the Screen Actors Guild for 2 terms, and made it a life goal to enjoy his life on his very own farm in Stanfordville in upstate New York, naming it Verney Farm, where he and his lovely wife Frances of 64 years remained for the rest of their lives. He has been honored with the Kennedy Center honors, famously the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award, and who else gets their own postage stamp? That's so cool. An off-Broadway musical was even produced in dedication for the legend, Cagney, which I'm never really a fan of, but it just goes to show how strong of an influence this man had. But what has helped me and what I love and appreciate so much of him as an actor is his own mantra that I take with me all the time, and dozens of actors take as well. His own mantra: planting your feet, look the other fellow in the eye, and tell the truth. And it's one of the most brilliant pieces of advice that any actor could ever get. Orson Welles had called James Cagney, quote, maybe the greatest actor to ever appear in front of the camera. As one of my favorite actors, George C. Scott, has said of him too, of what elements had made him monumentally one of the all-time greats: simplicity and spirituality. He was simply a phenomenal spirit on and off screen, and I cherish this actor every chance I have. So that's all I got, you kids. But you tell me, do you agree with my picks? What are your favorite and from what you believe are the best performances of this amazing legend? Please share in the comments below. I always love hearing your thoughts, so I can comment right back. If you like this, please click like, subscribe to the channel, but also become a member, my friends, so you can gain access to the movie reviews. You can leave all the requests in the world, but voting officially is decided on Patreon, where movie reviews are as well. So every bit of support is truly appreciated. And I will always do everything I can to give every piece of content right back to y'all. Thank you so much for what? Whoa, wait. I need to do this right, my friends. My mother thanks you. My father thanks you. My sister thanks you. And I thank you.